Why silence is powerful. Have you ever noticed something strange? The most powerful person in the room is often the quietest one, while everyone else is rushing to speak, to prove themselves, to win arguments. There is always that one person sitting calmly in silence, watching, observing, understanding, and somehow, everyone listens when they finally speak. Why? Because silence is not weakness. In Stoic philosophy, silence is a form of power. It protects your mind, sharpens your thinking, and reveals the truth about people around you. But in a world addicted to noise, opinions, and constant talking, most people have forgotten the hidden power of silence. In this video, you will discover why Stoic philosophers valued silence more than speaking, why quiet people often have the strongest minds, how silence exposes manipulation and disrespect, and how mastering silence can completely change how people treat you. By the end of this video, you may start seeing silence, not as emptiness, but as one of the most powerful tools you can ever use. 1. The world is addicted to noise. Look around you. Everywhere there is noise. Social media opinions, arguments in comment sections, people trying to prove they're right. People talking, and talking. But very few people are actually thinking. Most conversations today are not about understanding. They're about winning. Everyone wants to respond immediately. Everyone wants the last word. Everyone wants attention. But the Stoics understood something deeply important. Talking too much weakens your power. The Roman philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Think about that for a moment. Nature itself designed us to listen more than we talk. Yet most people do the exact opposite. And this creates problems. When you talk too much, you reveal your plans. You expose your emotions. You give people information they can use against you. But when you are silent, you observe. You learn. You understand people's true nature. Silence allows you to see what noise hides. Because when people talk freely, they reveal who they truly are. Their insecurities, their intentions, their weaknesses. But they will never notice that you are studying them, because they assume silence means you have nothing to say. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings in human psychology. Silence does not mean lack of intelligence. Often, it means the exact opposite. 2. Silence makes people reveal themselves. Imagine 2 people having an argument. One person keeps talking. They defend themselves, explain themselves, raise their voice. But the other person remains calm. They say very little. They simply listen. Something interesting begins to happen. The person who keeps talking starts to reveal more and more. Their frustration, their emotions, their hidden motives. The more they talk, the more they expose themselves. This is a psychological effect. Silence creates pressure. Humans are uncomfortable with silence. When a conversation becomes quiet, most people feel the need to fill the gap. So they keep talking, and in doing so, they reveal things they normally would hide. This is why skilled negotiators use silence. This is why interrogators use silence. This is why wise leaders use silence. Because silence invites truth. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, understood this deeply. Despite being the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, he spoke very little. He observed more than he talked, because he knew something most people ignore. Words can manipulate, but silence reveals. 3. Silence protects your energy. Every conversation costs energy. Arguments cost even more. Think about how drained you feel after arguing with someone who refuses to understand you. They interrupt you. They twist your words. They try to provoke you. And before you realize it, you are emotionally exhausted. This is why Stoicism teaches emotional discipline. Not every situation deserves your response. Not every comment deserves your attention. And not every person deserves your explanation. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Silence protects your mental peace. Because when you refuse to engage with negativity, you refuse to let it control you. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You always own the option of having no opinion. Think about that. You do not have to react to everything. You do not have to respond to every insult. You do not have to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you." Silence becomes a shield that protects your peace. 4. Silence makes you mysterious. There is something fascinating about people who speak less. They create curiosity. When someone talks all the time, you already know everything about them. Their opinions, their emotions, their plans, but when someone speaks only when necessary, people pay attention, because their words carry weight. Silence creates mystery, and mystery attracts respect. Think about the most confident person you know. They rarely try to prove themselves. They do not chase attention. They do not argue to win approval. They simply exist with quiet confidence. And because they are not desperate to speak. When they finally do, people listen. This is power. Real power does not shout. Real power does not need to prove itself. 5. Silence wins arguments. One of the most powerful Stoic techniques is refusing to participate in useless arguments. Most arguments today are not about truth. They are about ego. Each person wants to feel superior. But Stoics understood something profound. Winning an argument rarely changes someone's mind. Instead, it often creates resentment. When people feel defeated, they become defensive. They stop listening. But silence changes the dynamic. When someone tries to provoke you, and you remain calm and quiet, it confuses them. They expect a reaction. They expect anger. But your silence removes the fuel from the fire. And without that fuel, the conflict slowly dies. Because arguments require two participants. Remove one, and the argument disappears. 6. Silence shows emotional strength. Many people think silence means weakness. But in reality, silence often requires more strength than speaking. It is easy to react. It is easy to shout back. It is easy to defend your ego, but controlling your emotions, that requires discipline. Stoicism teaches that emotions should never control your actions. When someone insults you, your first impulse may be anger. But the Stoic response is different. Pause. Observe. Stay silent. Because the moment you react emotionally, you give away your control. But when you remain calm, you show something rare. Mastery over yourself. And nothing intimidates people more than someone who cannot be emotionally manipulated. 7. Silence helps you think clearly. Most people speak while thinking. Stoics thought before speaking. Silence creates space for reflection. When your mind is quiet, your thoughts become clearer. You notice details others miss. You recognize patterns in human behavior. You make wiser decisions. This is why philosophers throughout history valued solitude and silence. Because deep thinking requires mental space. And constant noise destroys that space. 8. Silence is confidence. Insecure people talk a lot. They explain themselves constantly. They try to prove their value. But confident people feel no need to impress others. They do not chase validation. They know who they are. And because they are comfortable with themselves. They are also comfortable with silence. Silence shows you are not desperate for approval. You do not need constant attention. You do not need to win every conversation. Your presence alone is enough. 9. The power of saying less. Most people believe power comes from speaking loudly, proving a point, or dominating conversations. But Stoic philosophy teaches something very different. Real power comes from self-control. And one of the clearest signs of self-control is the ability to remain silent when everyone else is reacting emotionally. Think about a moment when someone insulted you. Maybe they mocked you. Maybe they tried to provoke you. Maybe they wanted to embarrass you in front of others. Most people react immediately. They defend themselves. They raise their voices. They try to prove they are right. But when you react emotionally, something important happens. You give that person exactly what they wanted. Your reaction becomes their victory. Stoics understood this trap thousands of years ago. They knew that reacting emotionally only gives power to the person who provoked you. Silence breaks this pattern. When someone expects a reaction and receives none, they become uncomfortable. Your calmness forces them to confront their own behavior. And often, their words lose power the moment you refuse to engage. This is why silence is not weakness. It is strategic restraint. It shows that you control your emotions rather than letting others control them for you. And people quickly notice when someone has this level of discipline, because emotional control is rare. 10. Silence reveals true character. One of the most fascinating things about silence is what it reveals about other people. When you stop talking and simply observe, you begin to see patterns in human behavior. Some people will feel uncomfortable around your silence. They will try to fill the space with unnecessary conversation. Others may begin talking about themselves endlessly. Some may even become defensive or suspicious. Why? Because silence removes distractions. It forces people to face themselves. And many people are uncomfortable with that. The Stoics believed that people reveal their character through their actions and words over time. But this only becomes clear when you observe carefully. When you talk constantly, you miss these observations. Your attention is focused on speaking rather than understanding. But silence shifts your focus. You begin noticing who interrupts others, who lies easily, who speaks with kindness, who speaks with arrogance, who listens, and who only waits for their turn to talk. These details reveal everything about a person's character. And once you see these patterns, you can make wiser decisions about who to trust and who to avoid. 11. Silence creates inner strength. The Stoics believed that true strength comes from mastering the mind. And mastering the mind requires discipline. Silence is a powerful training ground for this discipline. When you choose silence, you practice controlling impulses. You resist the urge to interrupt. You resist the urge to argue. You resist the urge to defend your ego instead. You observe your thoughts. You analyze your emotions. You ask yourself, is this situation worth my energy? Is this person worth my attention? Is this conversation productive, or is it simply noise? This habit of reflection strengthens your mind over time. Because instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding intentionally. And intentional responses are always more powerful than emotional reactions. The Stoics believed that the mind should guide behavior, not emotions. Silence helps you develop this mental discipline. It creates space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies wisdom. 12. Why silence makes people respect you. Respect is rarely demanded successfully. It is usually earned through behavior. and silence often communicates confidence. When someone constantly tries to prove themselves, it signals insecurity. But when someone speaks calmly and only when necessary, it signals control. People naturally respect those who appear composed and thoughtful. This is because calmness suggests intelligence, thoughtfulness suggests wisdom, and restraint suggests strength. Think about leaders throughout history. The most respected leaders were rarely the loudest voices in the room. They listened carefully, they spoke deliberately, and when they spoke, their words mattered. This is the power of measured speech. Silence creates weight behind your words. If you talk all the time, people stop paying attention. But if you speak rarely and thoughtfully, people listen more closely. Because they know your words are intentional. 12. Silence protects you from manipulation. Another reason silence is powerful is because it protects you from manipulation. Many manipulative people rely on emotional reactions. They provoke, they criticize, they accuse. The goal is to trigger a response that they can control. But when you remain calm and silent, their strategy fails. Without your reaction, they lose influence over the situation. This forces them to reveal their true intentions. And once you recognize manipulation, you can choose not to engage. Stoic philosophy teaches that your peace of mind should never depend on someone else's behavior. Silence allows you to maintain that independence. It reminds you that you do not have to participate in every conflict. And you do not have to respond to every opinion. You control your reactions, and that control protects your peace. 13. Silence strengthens self-awareness. Most people spend their lives reacting to the outside world. But Stoicism encourages a different focus. It encourages self-examination, and silence creates the perfect environment for this reflection. When you remove constant noise and conversation, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin asking deeper questions. What do I truly value? What kind of person do I want to become? What habits are holding me back? What fears control my decisions? These questions rarely appear in noisy environments. They appear in quiet moments. Moments of solitude. Moments of silence. This is why philosophers, thinkers, and leaders throughout history valued quiet time. Because deep self-awareness requires mental space. And silence provides that space. 14. Silence helps you control anger. Anger is one of the most destructive emotions. It clouds judgment, it damages relationships, and it often leads to regret. The Stoics believed anger should never control your actions. But controlling anger requires practice. And silence is one of the most effective tools. When someone provokes you, the first instinct is to react. But if you pause and remain silent, something interesting happens. The emotional intensity begins to fade. Your mind regains clarity, and you can choose a wiser response. Many conflicts escalate because people react immediately. Words are exchanged quickly, emotions rise, and the situation spirals out of control. But silence interrupts this cycle. It gives you time to think. And time to think often prevents mistakes. 15. Silence builds wisdom. Wisdom does not come from talking constantly. It comes from observing, thinking, and learning. Silence creates the conditions for all three. When you listen more than you speak, you gain access to knowledge from others. When you observe carefully, you understand human behavior more deeply. When you reflect quietly, you connect experiences into meaningful insights. Over time, these habits build wisdom. And wisdom is far more valuable than the temporary satisfaction of winning an argument. The Stoics believed that wisdom was the highest virtue. And wisdom grows best in environments where the mind can think clearly. Which is why silence has always been associated with philosophers and thinkers. 10. The quiet mind is a strong mind. A quiet mind is not empty. It is focused. It is disciplined. It is aware. Most people live in constant mental noise. Thoughts racing. Opinions forming instantly. Emotions reacting automatically. But Stoic practice trains the mind to slow down, to observe thoughts rather than immediately acting on them. Silence strengthens this ability. It teaches you that you do not have to respond to every thought that enters your mind. You can simply observe it, let it pass, and maintain clarity. This mental discipline leads to greater emotional stability. You become less reactive, less anxious, less controlled by external events, and more guided by reason. Final conclusion. In a world filled with noise, silence has become rare. But rarity often creates value. Silence allows you to observe what others miss. Silence protects your emotional energy. Silence reveals people's true character. Silence strengthens self-control. Silence builds wisdom. And perhaps most importantly, silence gives you the ability to choose your responses instead of reacting automatically. The Stoics understood that true power is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. And mastering silence is one of the clearest signs that someone has achieved this control. So the next time you feel pressured to respond immediately, pause, take a breath, observe the situation, and remember that sometimes the most powerful response is silence.